it talks about a day where we're going to be under the dominion of Esau's posterity, and that's ostensibly Sam Altman, Peter Thiel, Bill Gates, the Rothschild family, the Epstein clan. I suspect we're going to see some famine by 2027. Unfortunately, I think we're going to see a lot of people die. And we know that that's part of their agenda, is a depopulation agenda. Like I'd mentioned earlier, Proverbs 8:36, he that sinneth against me wrongeth his own soul. All they that hate me love death. And these people hate Jesus Christ, and they certainly love death, Sean.
That was my friend, author Andrew Swedger, author of End Times Bible Prophecy, and we get deep into the weeds in this one as we talk about Israel and the beast system, which is clearly rolling out right now in front of all of us with eyes to see. Before we start this important broadcast, just a quick word. Let's talk about tungsten. Prices have been climbing as governments and manufacturers race to secure reliable Western supply chains outside of China, which still dominates the global market. That's why districts like the Great Basin are starting to attract serious attention. Vault's flagship project is located in one of North America's most historically productive tungsten belts, a region the USGS estimates could host around 168,000 tons of tungsten oxide in the ground. At today's prices, that equates to a potential in-situ value of roughly $30 to $50 billion. As demand for critical minerals accelerates, projects positioned in proven jurisdictions with historical tungsten potential could become increasingly valuable as the market catches on. And Vault is positioned right in the middle of it. Here's where it gets interesting. In less than 12 months, the United States has taken 5 major actions to rebuild critical mineral supply chains, including Executive Order 14231, Project Vault, and a State Department ministerial with 55 foreign ministers focused directly on critical minerals. The reason is simple. America's defense supply chain depends on tungsten, and the U.S. no longer mines it commercially. That's why Washington has committed $12 billion through Project Vault and additional federal support to secure domestic supply. And Vault isn't sitting still. They're systematically assembling what's shaping up to be a massive U.S. tungsten portfolio with the potential to solve U.S. needs. If you want to learn more about this tungsten story and a team that has delivered big results in the past, check out the link in the description. Hey friends, welcome back. Thank you so very much for clicking play. I know God is alive and well in your lives and in your hearts. And to that end, be not afraid. You know, my guest who's waiting on the line here, and he's going to watch this Thomas Massie clip with us. I just told him, hey, before we start, I'm going to just randomly open up the Bible. And almost every single time I do that on a broadcast, something amazing appears. And I opened up completely randomly Proverbs 6. Verses 16 through 19, and it is absolutely spot on for Juanita Broderick. I hope you're listening. For there are 6 things the Lord hates. No, 7. Haughtiness, lying, murdering, plotting evil, eagerness to do wrong, a false witness, sowing discord among brothers. Honestly, guys, I pulled that up randomly. Juanita Broderick, it's time for you to get right with God. She notes, and you're going to hear the clip from Thomas Massie on Meet the Press on Sunday. She notes Massie is so full of shit. If he had the names, he would have already announced them. Thomas Massie is a total fraud. Thou shalt not bear false witness. Let me scroll down. Here's my response to Miss Broderick. You are truly a demonic, soulless woman. If you can't even stand up and speak the truth for dead babies and children, you really ought to beg God for mercy and repent. You are old. The clock is ticking, you wretched woman. Why is she making that claim? I'll play the clip in just 1 second. And by the way, the mega grifter and all the president's men are scum running cover for child rapists and, in some cases, child murderers. So guys, if this is the plan, X22 and we know are trusting, I'm out.
Can we expect you to name more names in the coming weeks and months?
Yes. Todd Blanche is violating the law. There's still millions of files they haven't released. We know from talking to the victims' lawyers that their own 302 forms haven't been released. We know that files have been over-redacted. I have released at least 3 names of billionaires who are implicated in this. I don't think it's possible to get to convictions with Todd Blanche at the top and with the FBI director, Kash Patel, at the top, because they've effectively both perjured themselves by saying that there's nobody else in the file. files. Even Melania doesn't believe that. The First Lady knows that Jeffrey Epstein didn't act alone. And here's the great thing, Kristen. Whether I'm in Congress or not, the Epstein Files Transparency Act is a law, and it goes on for years. So if we can't get this Attorney General and this FBI Director to do the right thing, the next ones who take those seats are obligated by law to release the files that these individuals are not releasing now.
Well, there you have it, guys. And let me remind you, quote, stop talking about Epstein. That's your fearless leader, Donald J. Trump. By the way, check out my X page and listen to this report from James O'Keefe about exactly this topic. Friends, Juanita Broderick is a total bald-faced liar, and at this point in human history, I can't imagine why anybody would not stand for the children and the dead babies. Let me bring on my guest, our friend Andrew Swedger. He's an author. The book End Times Prophecy, Identifying the Antichrists. The Devil's in the Details. Andrew, welcome back.
Hey, Sean, thank you for having me. I appreciate being here with you today.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you back. I've got a lot of clips to play, and we are going to get into the deep end of what may be food shortages right around the corner. Peace deal or no peace deal, guys. But Andrew, what'd you just make of anything I just said there? Especially that Bible poll. Isn't that interesting? A random poll, and it brings up exactly the warning Juanita Broderick should heed.
Well, absolutely no doubt about it, because you think about it, a lying tongue, God hates these things, a false witness, somebody who sows discord. And I think there are groups of people that are sowing discord and no doubt hate God. And ultimately, I was thinking about this, Sean, when you cited this earlier of Proverbs 8:36 that says, he that sinneth against me wrongeth his own soul. All they that hate me love death. And I think of all the death that's happening in the Middle East, thanks to our friends in Israel.
Absolutely. And I would remind the audience too, Juanita Broderick is old. I'm getting older, but everybody, regardless of your age, should get right with God in these times. These are not only tumultuous times, they're accelerating at a rapid pace right into this beast system, which we're going to cover in detail here in this interview. But what do you make of what Thomas Massie said? Massie's standing for the children. Juanita Broderick is standing with Trump, who's named in the Epstein files. And I guess I would remind Miss Broderick that it would be better for you to tie a millstone around your neck, ma'am, and cast yourself into the depths of the sea. Andrew?
Well, that's exactly right. We see Massey is trying to expose this wickedness, this evil, these things that are absolutely diabolical. He's standing up for truth and righteousness. And then we have this other side that's attempting to cover up the story itself as if nothing happened. Turn your head the other way. Don't ask questions. And for some reason, they just keep denying the truth. It's really appalling, Sean.
Well, not only is it appalling, it's time for everybody to get sober, Andrew. I've had that little voice whispering to me, and it's my God voice. I think it's God himself, frankly. We all have one. But in my case, when you pray and you ask God for wisdom and direction, he's been giving it to me in spades for the last year. And the message is, be sober, be vigilant for what is coming upon the land. I swear to you, Andrew, it's in my heart, it's in my soul. And that's why everybody's going to hear me now be a lot more spiritual in these broadcasts, because the hour is late.
Well, it absolutely is, Sean. We are, I don't think people really realize how close we are to things unfolding here, end times Bible prophecy. And my heart really goes out to all the sheep that are asleep. And I just pray that this message will get out to as many people as possible. And I'm thankful for the opportunity that we can share the truth, brother.
Well, you got that right, Andrew. And let me just say this too. At the beginning of the year, I made a video about 2026, and I said, there are several subjects that will not go away just because 2025 ended. And one of those subjects was what we just covered, the Epstein clients, the names of which we know some and the names of which we will find out more. The Epstein clients who not only trafficked in children and raped children, but in some cases murdered children and babies, Juanita Broderick. In addition to that topic, President Trump, we have the cover-up of Charlie Kirk's assassination in Utah on September 10th. I'll remind everybody that just 30 days later, Accurate Energetic Systems in Tennessee blew up, killing every would-be witness inside. And that's the same Accurate Energetic Systems that had the $440,000 DoD contract to create a very small explosive device for just such a purpose. Why am I saying that? because the news about Charlie's assassination just keeps coming. If you know where to look, guys, listen to this. Have you seen this, Andrew? This is the whistleblower who was hired to help pave over the crime scene just a day or two after Charlie's murder. Have you seen this one?
No, I haven't. I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Listen.
You know, there was two guys in charge and a ragtag crew. One of the guys was in charge of a state-owned facility in American Fork, and the other guy was in a maintenance groundskeeper on a facility in Provo. And these are the two guys I'm corresponding with. The first guy, you know, the second guy that I hadn't talked to on the phone basically said, hey, look, we're not talking to anybody. We're not saying anything to the media. He says this is above our pay grade. The FBI and the state, the governor and the FBI, that's what they told me. The governor and the FBI said they want this done by Monday, and we need to get it done.
All right, guys, I'm coming back to Andrew. By the way, Andrew, you can testify to the fact that I literally said before I hit record, I'm going to randomly open up the Bible and let's see what happens, because usually magic happens when I ask God to just take me to the right page. You can testify that that's the truth about that Proverbs passage, right?
Yes, absolutely.
It's just remarkable. God will work in your lives. And friends, if you need help, if you're crying out because these times have become so hard, you cannot pay your rent, you cannot pay for gas in your car, cry out to Jesus and beg him, ask him to be there for you, ask him for help, and ask him for wisdom. What'd you make of that clip I just played?
Well, it's interesting how quickly they're trying to cover up the scene. And again, I think this goes back to perhaps the Epstein clan could be involved here with the murder of Charlie Kirk. You know, he did turn down a lot of money from Bibi. And so it really makes you kind of wonder what's really going on here.
Well, what's really going on here? Let me tell you what's really going on here is for those who quote unquote still trust the plan seems to be this: war with Iran. Maybe there's peace, maybe there's not. But let me provide a further warning to my listeners regarding any peace plan. Israel will sabotage it, folks, one way or the other. And if that doesn't work, be vigilant for a false flag act of terror on our own shores. But what's really going on here, Andrew, regarding these first two subjects, is that Donald J. Trump is named in the Epstein files, and some of the allegations against him are horrific. And he is, or at least his administration is, I just debated this with attorney Todd Callender, his administration and the FBI are covering up Charlie's assassination, and they are not doing an investigation, and they're trying to pin it on a patsy. And when Todd and I debated that the other day, Andrew, he made the point that Trump doesn't own the FBI. I said, whoa. Trump put Kash Patel in charge of the FBI. The guy's either incompetent or he's a willing dupe, because Kash Patel's Trump's guy, and the FBI is trying to pin this all on Tyler Robinson. And the FBI and the governor of Utah are the ones that wanted the crime scene altered within 2-3 days of Charlie's assassination. Andrew, you don't do that if you got nothing to hide.
Well, exactly, you're right. It's just all dubious, Sean, from how when Charlie was assassinated, how they took him out of there. There was no autopsy. And really, they failed on all protocol levels, what you're supposed to do in a situation like that. And so the cover up just seems more and more obvious. And they must think that we, the people, are stupid or something, but we're not buying it.
No, we're not buying it, but the mainstream horror media is trying to continue to sell this on the American people. The global mainstream Mockingbird media that owns all of the corporations. But I want to ask you about AI and the beast system that's coming into fruition. Before I play this clip featuring a couple of the most prominent AI billionaire demons behind so much of this, your thoughts on AI in the fast track we're on. And I want to point out to the audience, too, that it was Thomas Massie and Marjorie Taylor Greene that had the autonomy, sort of the legal immunity for AI data centers stripped out of the big, beautiful bill. Were it not for those two individuals, the big, beautiful bill would have given essentially immunity to data centers to do whatever they wanted for a decade. And states wouldn't be able to do anything about it. So again, if this is trusting the plan, guys, I want nothing to do with this plan. Your thoughts before I play this clip on AI?
Well, there's a few things there, Sean. That's a great question. Number one, I'm concerned for individuals in the younger generation who seems to be using that as a main source rather than critically thinking and doing their own researching. So I've read some articles about brain rot, and they're referring that to AI. So I'm concerned that people are just going to become lazy in the mind, and they're not going to critically think and use. So that's point number one, and on the personal level. And then number two, with these AI data centers that nobody consented to, there's absolutely no benefit to any of these AI data centers. And matter of fact, I think there's going to be an uproar over this in a matter of time when the masses of the sheeple finally wake up and see that we're in this technocracy takeover.
And what does the Bible warn us about this type of technology?
Well, that's the thing, Sean. When we actually take a step back and look in Genesis 27:40, it's interesting that you bring that up. It talks about a day where we're going to be under the dominion of Esau's posterity, and that's ostensibly Sam Altman, Peter Thiel, Bill Gates, the Rothschild family, the Epstein clan. Now, I'm not saying that all of the Jews are in on this plan. Okay, I'm not saying that at all. But when you look at the people in these positions of power, rulership, and authority, it is from this one tribe. It is from this one clan. 1 Timothy 6:10 says, "For the love of money is the root of all evil." And we know who controls the money supply. And so it just kind of trickles down from there. And we know where this is all going, Sean. We definitely know where this is all going.
Well, you just named two of the right people in this next clip, but in addition to that, you named the Rothschilds. I couldn't agree more. And I want to remind people, Israel equals the Rothschilds. The Rothschilds equals Epstein. And I'll quote, "As you may know, I represent the Rothschilds," signed Jeffrey Epstein. And Epstein equals Trump, to the extent that Trump doesn't want anybody talking about the Epstein clients. And he admitted to MGT, Marjorie Taylor Greene, that those are his friends. Some of these Epstein clients are his friends. So thus the cover-up. So I guess pick your side, guys. At this point, pick your side, God or the devil, good or evil. That's my opinion. Listen to this.
You have an incredible amount of power at this moment in time. Why should we trust you?
You shouldn't.
I have a kid that was born in 2025. I don't think he'll ever be smarter than AI. I don't think that'll get in the way of his happiness or fulfillment at all. It's sort of strange, and also sort of to him like it's the only world he'll ever know.
Well, I love the idea of getting a drone and having light fentanyl-laced urine spraying on analysts who tried to screw us. So that's my lower purpose. But the higher purpose for me was to get this nation to be the preeminent power in the world.
You would prefer the human race to endure, right? You're hesitating.
Yeah, well,
yes?
I don't know. I would,
this is a long hesitation. This is a long hesitation.
So the primary source of death in Palestine is the fact that Hamas has realized that there are millions and millions of useful idiots.
I know it's difficult to hear, but it's time to limit the First Amendment in order to protect it.
Okie dokie, folks. Do you see where this is heading? And Donald J. Trump just fast-tracked permitting for AI data centers that nobody wants. Andrew, if this is part of the plan, if this is trust the plan, I'm so far off the reservation that I can hardly stop myself from throwing up when I mention the man's name. And I'm talking Trump.
I mean,
and I'm literally talking about Trump.
Well, the thing is, he definitely has sold us out to this technocracy takeover. He's compromised himself. There's no doubt about it. Obviously, that's why he didn't want the Epstein files to come out. These data centers, Sean, is really no good. There's absolutely no benefit, and I don't see really the point of it other than them having total control over us, where we're going to be under their supremacy, and there's really not going to be a lot we can do other than ultimately trust God.
Well, you're over the target to the degree that plays into my next clip. The technocracy. What is their plan specifically, folks? I want you to hear this clip between Health Ranger Mike Adams, a friend of the show, and Andrew Day warning about the acceleration of technocracy. What are we really seeing under Donald J. Trump?
And technocracy is a political ideology that basically, replaces individual rights or property rights with a top-down system of control run by scientists and engineers, where at the core of it, you replace the currency with an energy credit system, and then you have a social credit system on top of this. This is a movement that's been going on for about 90 years. So I realized, CBDCs are part of this other thing. Well, how is this technocracy movement doing? How quickly is this accelerating? And that's when, I've realized, and then I've been putting the alert out there, that we're at the end state of this now. If you look at digital IDs, if you look at AI data centers, I mean, I'm a big fan of AI. You and I are both big fans of AI, but the AI data centers that we're dealing with are part of the control grid. They're not part of, open source AI that you can use to expand your consciousness and expand your knowledge. These are specifically part of the control grid. And I even, through a site that I created called technocracyatlas.com, which I believe I launched when you were, you had me on when you were hosting the Alex Jones show. I've really leveled that site up, where I've put together maps of the United States, as well as kind of a global picture where you can see the growth of technocracy since 1973. And you can even download for free a PDF with detailed information about your state or your country in terms of what the developments are going on with technocracy. But we are at the late stage.
We're showing your site here, Technocracy Atlas, while you're talking.
Yeah, and so so this map, and then if you go to actually timeline up at the top, this actually gives you kind of the animated the view. Because what I find is difficult to communicate with people is when you're in it, it seems like maybe things aren't going very quickly. But when you actually take a step back, look at all of the information and project it out over time, what you'll see is it's really accelerating. So you have in there all of the details, the methodology that was used, the data sources, so on and so forth. But the truth is that, unfortunately, and you mentioned this at the very beginning, technocracy, in my opinion, has accelerated 3 years under Trump.
I'll stop it there, guys. 3 years, an acceleration of 3 years under Donald J. Trump. And friends, let me just paint the picture. Regardless of peace deal claims, no peace deal, every red-blooded Christian American who voted Trump and didn't get what we thought we would get is praying for peace with Iran, of course. But I no longer believe a word that comes out of this man's mouth when he says peace deals over the weekend, only to drive down the oil market and make millions of dollars on those bets on Wall Street on Monday, only to find out later that that wasn't true. So I hope there is a peace deal, or that the peace deal announced over this past weekend holds. But friends, again, if it holds for any period of time, it will probably be sabotaged by the Israelis. And that leads us into the conversation about empty shelves one way or the other. And you sent me an article about that. Let's talk about coming potential food shortages. By the way, I have a clip to play. California is just weeks away from running out of gasoline.
Yeah, this article was by Mark A. Shyrock. I just want to make sure he gets credit. You can find him on Substack. I also have the article listed at mustreadbooks.info on the blog section. It is a very lengthy article. I would encourage all the audience to read this article in its entirety. He has several sources he quotes in this article. And so I just want to touch on a few of these points here. And he basically says, what I'm about to show you is not speculation, it's not opinion. It is documented sources, verified trajectory of global oil supplies as it exists right now. And this article is written on May 8th. He says, if you can hear me, your life depends on what is in this article. I'm not being dramatic. I'm not overstating this. I'm telling you that the data says the United States of America will run out of usable oil by July 4th, 2026, and Europe will run out this month. The food systems that feeds you runs on diesel. Diesel runs out first. And then he goes on to talk about tank bottoms. And what are tank bottoms? And tank bottoms are essentially when these tanks, right here, I'm going to read it. He says, what are tank bottoms? You're going to hear a phrase in the coming days that most Americans have never encountered, and that's tank bottoms. And Jeff Curry, senior advisor at the Carlyle Group, told Bloomberg Television on May 6th that the oil storage tanks in Europe will hit tank bottom sometime at the end of May. In the United States, July 4th, as I just mentioned. He said, stop and understand what this means. Tank bottoms does not mean the tanks are low. It means the systems stop working. Oil storage tanks require a minimum volume of liquid to maintain the pressure that allows pumps to function. When levels drop below the threshold, the remaining oil becomes physically inaccessible to the pipeline system. It cannot be pumped out. It cannot be moved. The pumps fail. So then he goes on to describe once these pumps fail, there's no opportunity to get this oil. And then he goes on to say that 70% of all of our commerce is done with diesel, and diesel is going to be hit first. So he says diesel runs out first. He says not all fuels are equal. He said, but diesel stops everything in America. He says diesel is not a luxury fuel. Diesel is the blood supply of American economy. 70% of all agricultural and food products in the United States are transported by truck. Every truck runs on diesel. Every tractor, every field runs on diesel. Every combine harvester runs on diesel. Every refrigerated trailer keeping food cold on its way to the grocery store runs on diesel. Every freight train pulling grain cars runs on diesel. He says, when diesel becomes scarce, trucks stop moving. When trucks stop moving, food does not get picked up from farms. It does not get delivered to the processing plants. It does not get driven to the distribution centers, and it does not arrive at the grocery store. He says, this is not inflation. Inflation is when prices go up. This is when the shelves go empty because there is nothing to put on them. There's nothing to put on them because there's no fuel to move the food from where it grows to where you live. The United Nations has sounded the alarm, saying that because of the Strait of Hormuz and the disruption, that there's fears of a global famine and food crisis on the horizon. And then he goes on to talk about the aviation collapse. He says on May 2nd, Spirit Airlines ceased all operations. The announcement came at 3 a.m. Eastern Time. 17,000 workers lost their jobs. The airline lawyers said there was no remaining way out. Spirit absorbed $100 million in fuel costs since March 1st. It is gone. Spirit Airlines is not the last carrier that will fall. They are the first carrier. Then he goes on to talk about how all these other airlines can't afford the rising cost of the fuel. And then he talks about, when you go through the article here a little bit further, Sean, I just want to toggle down here real quick because there's a lot here. He says, and you're familiar with this when it comes to silver and the paper markets, he says there are two prices for oil. The paper price is what you see on the news, the futures contracts traded on exchange. Then there's the physical price. This is what the actual barrels of oil sell for when real buyers pay real money for real crude to be delivered to real refineries. In normal markets, he says those two are relatively close. Right now, they are not. He said the gap between them is between $20 and $60 a barrel, depending on the grade and the day of and the crude on that day. And then he goes on to say, veteran energy investor George Noble captured the disconnect when paper settled at 90 and physical traded at 144 on the same day. One of them is wrong. He added, based on 45 years of experience, that when the paper catches up with the physical, the repricing will be violent. And then they go on to say, Sean, that essentially because of these refineries not being able to get the oil coming in anymore and what's going on in the Strait of Hormuz and the lack of oil coming out of there, that this is essentially we're going to run out of base oil itself. Europe's going to run out of base oil, and then everything's going to come to a screeching halt. So I would really encourage the audience to take a look at that article in greater detail to see what's coming, because he then goes on to say at the very end that OPEC isn't going to save us this time. And he goes on to say why OPEC is falling apart and how they can't move any oil because they're all behind the blockade at the Strait of Hormuz themselves.
Sorry for the quick break. A bombshell study just revealed that GLP-1 drugs don't actually work the same for everyone. Your genes determine whether the injections work at all and whether you'll suffer the side effects, like blindness. At nearly $1,000 a month, that's a brutal gamble millions of Americans are unknowingly taking. That's why I think you're going to be obsessed with GLP-1 Elevate. Instead of a pharmaceutical gamble, it uses clinical studied plant-based ingredients like metabolate to help your body naturally boost its own GLP-1 signals, the ones controlling hunger and fullness. No prescription, no needles, no genetic lottery, no terrifying side effects. You'll get fewer cravings, you'll feel fuller faster, and you'll actually keep the results without the metabolic crash. Get 51% off right now at trimwithsgt.com. Every order includes free VIP coaching for life, a 60-day money-back guarantee, and free express shipping with subscription. Head to trimwithsgt.com right now before the offer expires. The link is below.
And he goes on to say why OPEC is falling apart and how they can't move any oil because they're all behind the blockade at the Strait of Hormuz themselves. And then he talks about when diesel hits a certain price that the truckers will no longer be able to afford to go out and everything will come to a collapse as far as we know in commerce.
Look, we're not fear-mongering here, guys. Again, be vigilant, stay sober, stay watchful, because whether or not you love Donald J. Trump, all of these things are actually happening. We're not being hyperbolic. Neither is the author of this particular article. I'll try to remember to leave it linked below. And allow me to make one more point. Regardless of the claims Trump was making over this past weekend, whether or not the peace deal holds, doesn't hold, I was hearing conflicting information over the past weekend. You know, I was hearing that the Straits of Hormuz will be opened 45%. You know, then I was hearing 100%. And again, Andrew, the bottom line in my viewpoint is that Israel will sabotage any peace deal because they are all in service of Israel first and the greater Israel project. And I really firmly believe that $250 million from the casino lady into Trump's pocket only further proves who Donald J. Trump serves, at least before he serves the American people. Here's Jimmy Dore with a clip about California running out of gas in the next 6 weeks.
Let's get back to this. Here we go.
Well, we have an update on California's oil and gas situation as state leaders get ready for prices to go up even more.
And California is relying on more imported fuel than ever right now, a situation made worse by the war in Iran. Governor Gavin Newsom's administration says it's working on a plan in the event of gas shortages.
Now, this was at the center of a hearing at the state capitol today. And KCRA3 political director Ashley Zavala joins us now. Ashley, what's the plan here?
Yeah, this was kind of a last-minute hearing that was organized this week. State energy officials said California basically has enough supply to meet demand for the next 6 weeks if the Strait of Hormuz stays closed. Beyond that, there are a lot of questions. This hearing was in the Assembly's Energy and Utilities Committee. In fact, it's still going on right now. It included Governor Gavin Newsom's top officials who monitor the oil and gas industry, notably California Energy Commission Vice Chairman Siva Gunda. Western States Petroleum Association President Jody Mueller was there, along with the UC Berkeley energy expert Severin Borenstein. Everyone agreed the war in Iran is making the state's gas price situation worse, while also agreeing California is relying way more on foreign countries for oil, which makes the state vulnerable to price spikes. Gunda specifically was...
They had an emergency meeting because I guess they didn't see this coming.
Well, they're not that good at planning like water for fires, and you know I can see that.
Emergency meeting. You waited until you had 6 weeks left of oil and gas in your. This is the 5th largest economy in the world.
Are you going to blame DEI for this, Jimmy? Because I won't stand for it.
One of our supporters says, I believe the issue is we don't have enough refineries. We sell our crude to other countries that can process it and sell it back to us as processed fuel. That might be the issue.
So the U.S. produces, it's a net exporter of total petroleum, crude oil plus refined products, but it remains a net importer of crude oil specifically. This seeming paradox stems from differences in oil types, refinery designs, economics, logistics, and global trade dynamics. It's not about shortage. It's about optimization and profitability. So it's about, and by the way, why does Exxon get to make all the money? You know, if you live in Alaska, Kurt, if you live in Alaska,
yeah, I know. $1,500 per head.
You get some of that oil money. They get a check directly from the oil that is pumped out of the ground in Alaska. They get a check. I don't get that in California. Do you get that in Texas? No. Although there's a shit ton of oil that's under the United States land. Why don't we get a check for that? It goes right it goes into the pockets of ExxonMobil, the billionaire class, the Epstein class, and people who own stock. It doesn't go to the people. We all own that. They give them the grant. They give them the land that oil is under at pennies on the dollar.
That's right. Well, because you live in a corrupt, fake country, and doesn't work for you, and everything's a sham.
That's Kurt Metzger. He's not wrong, and he knows a lot more about the real history and the think tanks and the secret societies and satanic ritual abuse than the average person. I'm coming back to you, Andrew. Just a couple of thoughts, and then you can comment on that clip. But, you know, Trump talked endlessly about the golden age of America. under his leadership. Let's come back to that in just one second. This ain't no golden age, brother. People are struggling to pay their bills, and it could get a whole heck of a lot worse with the track we're on.
Well, absolutely. And it's interesting because that article that you just played by Jimmy Dore that he read, it said 6 weeks. This article that I read came out on May 8th. So that would put it essentially at 6 weeks from now. And in the article, it also talked about how the last tanker arrived into Long Beach first part of spring this year to bring in the oil that we needed. So that's kind of been a cushion. It was over 200 million barrels that they brought in. But it's interesting because he says this. It says, while American storage tanks empty, the United States is exporting petroleum at an all-time record levels. Total petroleum exports hits 14.2 million barrels per day in 2026, a 33% increase from 2025. Refined product exports hits a fresh all-time high at 8.2 million barrels per day. Gasoline exports rose to 27%. Diesel exports rose 23%. Jet fuel exports rose 82%. And he says, read that again. Jet fuel exports rose 82%, while Spirit Airlines went bankrupt from fuel costs. The United States is sending its fuel overseas to fill shortfalls in Europe and in Asia, while its own inventories collapse. U.S. crude imports are at a fresh 5-year seasonal lows. The country is simultaneously producing record volumes, exporting record volumes, and watching its own reserves drain at record speed. The national average of gas on May 7th was $4.52 per gallon, up $4.27 just 1 week, and up from $2.81 in January. He said in California, it's at $5.84 and at $6.17 per gallon. And diesel in Michigan has hit $6 a gallon. So the thing is here, Sean, I think this is setting us up for some major chaos. If this all happens, if we do run out of the supply, like he's saying here in this article, like also what Jimmy Dore was reading, that we're going to be in a situation where a lot of Americans sadly aren't prepared. They don't have a lot of food put up. What are they going to do in a situation where maybe they only have 3 days worth of food at home? They don't have 3 months or 6 months worth of food. What are they going to do if they become sick, right? And you can't go out. What if they ration fuel? We really don't know where this potentially could go, but I really want to encourage people to prepare and get things while you can in the event that something like this happens. We all might have to hunker down for a while. And if things don't happen, at least you've bought things before inflation takes off and the price increases anyways.
Well, and let's be clear, things have already happened. We've seen all of these oil refineries and power stations all over the world catch on fire, explode, whatever. Nobody seems to know why. And so that's already happened. So the infrastructure has already been beaten down to some extent. But I want to remind people that Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum, by the way, the World Economic Forum launched in part by King Charles, the eugenicist, the Satanist, in my opinion, King Charles. The World Economic Forum has openly stated, Andrew, in the future, like by 2030, they don't want us traveling in aircraft. They don't want passengers. They want to do away with all airports. I'm not making that up. That is one of their stated goals. They don't want us in cars. They don't want us owning single-family houses. The best way to do that, and I always wondered, well, how the heck are they going to pull that off? This is how they would pull that off, right? Energy is life, brother. If we don't have access to affordable energy on a daily basis, that's it. Our modern civilization melts away.
Well, that's exactly right. And I think about all the fertilizer that wasn't able to get out from the Strait of Hormuz. I think about the fertilizers, too, that wasn't released from China and also from Russia. So I think we're going to run into some really difficult times, not only here locally in the United States, but all around the world. I suspect we're going to see some famine by 2027. Unfortunately, I think we're going to see a lot of people die. And we know that that's part of their agenda, is a depopulation agenda. Like I'd mentioned earlier, Proverbs 8:36, he that sinneth against me wrongeth his own soul. All they that hate me love death. And these people hate Jesus Christ, and they certainly love death, Sean.
Well, they are the lovers of this world. Find the Bible passage. I just read it last night, and I don't want to paraphrase it. I want to get it right. If you love this world, you are of this world. You are not of me. For the rest of us who love Jesus and love justice and love truth and love children, this is a very difficult world in which to live because we long to be with the Father. We long to be with the Creator. We long to be with one true God in truth. We want to live in His presence for eternity, because more and more, guys, I'm in my 50s. The longer I've lived on this planet, the more I realize this place is like purgatory, if not literally hell on earth for some people. Look no further than Gaza, where Trump wants to build a hotel on the ocean. Andrew?
Yeah, well, you're exactly right, Sean. And I think maybe that verse was John 15:18. It says, if the world hates you, know that the world hated me before it hated you. That was Jesus Christ. And then it says in 1 John 3:13, marvel not if the world hates you. So it really is going to come down to, are we on team Jesus or team world, Sean? Are we trusting Jesus Christ or are we trusting man? Where it says in Psalm 118, verse 8 and verse 9, the exact middle verses of the Holy Bible, it's better to trust in the Lord than to put confidence in man. Verse 8 and verse 9, it's better to trust in the Lord than to put confidence in princes. And you could say presidents, rulers, people in authority or positions of power. And so we really need to just be trusting in God, because I think we're going to come into some very difficult times, brother.
Boy, if we make it to the middle of 2027, hallelujah. But you saw The Passion of the Christ by Mel Gibson, right?
Yeah.
Well, did you know that the shooting of part 2, The Resurrection of the Christ, just finished? And that incredibly powerful motion picture will be released. Part 1 will be released on Good Friday, 2027. And I tell you, man, it's the right time for the right story for humanity. And I think it's going to be a wake-up call. It's going to be 2 parts. Part 1 released on Good Friday and part 2 released about a month and a half later. And I think that's because part 1 will probably do maybe even more business than The Passion of the Christ, which broke records.
Well, it's great that the truth is getting out there, Sean. But I'm thinking eventually, with all these anti-Semitic laws they're trying to put on the books, how far this film will go, and if people might be persecuted as a result of putting this film out there. Because
I don't think they're
people that hate Christ.
Oh, for sure. But they're not going to pull that off by 2027, in my opinion. And there'd be hell to pay. There'd be hell to pay if they try, because people are fed up and people are waking up in droves. And by the way, the only people that supported the Massey opposition candidate that nobody had heard of, Ed the Zionist, were the boomers. I mean, come on, man. Everybody else kind of knows what's going on. It's like the scales have fallen off the eyes of the young people, but the old boomers, they're still on board with all of this garbage. All of it, just about all of it. Not every single boomer, but I think it was 65% of the boomers supported Ed the Zionist in Kentucky.
Yeah, I think that's a generation that's been brainwashed by the television and the newspaper. And, I just pray that God even wakes up more boomers to the truth, and the scales will be removed from their eyes, because they're not fighting for the right team right now.
No, they're sure not. And by the way, they supported the candidate, Ed the Zionist, who openly says, like, I don't want war. You don't want war. Trump promised no more war. Here we are with Iran, and Ed the Zionist, you know what he wants? Andrew, do you know what he wants? He had said it openly. By the way, he refused to debate. He didn't do one debate, not one. So nobody knows what he really thinks other than this. He wants a mandatory draft. He wants to send our sons to go die. Well, in this case, Iran, but God knows only he wants our sons to go die. He's ready to send our sons, 18 to 24, to go die in another meat grinder. And that's who the boomers voted for?
Wow. Sean, it's really disappointing that these are just unjust wars. All these wars are unjust, right? I mean, this war with Iran should have never happened. There's not a single person I know who wanted that war to take place. No one. So you think of that, and then you think of what's going on in Gaza and all this wickedness, and this man wants more of our young men to die. I think we've had enough of our young men die in these wars since World War I and World War II. Wouldn't you agree, Sean?
Well, that's just it. And yes, they've been hoodwinked about the whole, brainwashed with the Israel, bless Israel, you too shall be blessed. Curse Israel, you too shall be cursed. And the whole Holocaust brainwashing. And by the way, there's been Holocaust. How about the Armenian Holocaust? How about all of the Christians that died in World War I, World War II? How about the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia that killed only Christians, millions and millions of Christians? But, World War II, Holocaust. By the way, getting back to the golden age for America, I want your comments on this, and then we're going to wrap it up here pretty quick. We're going to talk a little bit about health, because without health, you die. The golden age for America, this ain't no golden age for America. Everything he's done has been really running in opposition to a golden age for America, although the Trust the Planners claim otherwise. But let's talk about the midterms. Andrew, it's shocking what's going on. Trump's polls are so incredibly in the toilet that it's going to take some sort of miracle to turn that around. And yet those of us who are awake and those of us who voted MAGA and believed in Trump feel betrayed. And now everybody kind of loathes the guy, which is going to turn it over to the opposition, which obviously also loathes we the people. And I just want to point out for folks that I didn't change. Andrew, you didn't change. Tucker Carlson didn't change. MAGA under Donald Trump changed. And, whereas Tucker and Charlie Kirk, who loved Trump, helped him get elected, now he loathes Tucker Carlson. He loathes Candace Owens. He loathes Alex Jones. He's covering up the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And he loves Mark Levin and the casino lady who gave him $250 million. So if the libtards take the midterms, Andrew, that's not my fault. It's not your fault. It's not Tucker Carlson's fault. MAGA changed. We didn't change.
Well, that's exactly right, Sean. And I really think this, no matter who they're going to put in power, whether it's on the left or the right side, I think the Agenda 2030, like you had mentioned earlier, it's still set in full motion. I think we're going to see a lot more distractions that they're going to try to pull us away from what's going on. And quite frankly, I think with Trump, we're not going to really see any justice. I don't see this guy standing up for truth, righteousness, and justice at all, Sean. I think he's covering many things up, and quite frankly, I hate to say it, but I think he lies a lot.
Yeah, you think? Well, how do you want to segue real quickly into health, Andrew? Because I would love to plug your terrific products for people, because our health is our wealth. And boy, sure, you got to eat. Obviously, you're going to need calories if the shelves go bare, undoubtedly. But hopefully that's not going to happen. And how do you shore up your health? What would you suggest people do to make sure they are in tip-top condition, Andrew?
Well, that's a great question, Sean. In 3 John 1:2, it says, "Beloved, I wish above all things that thou mayest prosper and be in health, and even thou soul prospereth." So we got to think in terms of prevention with our life rather than intervention. How can we prevent things from happening in our life? The number one killer that we have in America and also worldwide is heart disease. And so how can we prevent heart disease from happening in our own lives? Well, obviously, if we eat in moderation, right? All things in moderation. But then we look at what are some of the things we can do in order to help prevent that from happening. And I've got a wonderful formula here, Sean. It's called my Superior Vascular Cleanse formula. And this is like a natural Viagra. It has arginine and citrulline in it. And the key is having 5 grams of arginine to 1 gram of citrulline in it. And that is a precursor for nitric oxide. So that opens up the artery so the blood can flow throughout the body itself. This is excellent to take before a workout. This is excellent to take for preventative purposes. If you're eating red meat in moderation, what this essentially will do over time, Sean, is melt away the plaque from the arteries. This will help regulate the blood pressure and get rid of the bad cholesterol. I think another thing too, Sean, is we're fighting a war for our minds. I think there's a battle for our minds itself. So I've got this brain tincture here. And this brain tincture, what it does is it helps to promote not only memory itself, but it helps to prevent the loss of acetylcholine. One of the common denominators with people with Alzheimer's and dementia is they're lacking acetylcholine. So this formula prevents the loss of acetylcholine. There's a way we can actually build up our brain, and that's by eating foods that are rich in choline, such as eggs, beef liver, and cilantro. By the way, cilantro itself, these foods that are choline rich convert to acetylcholine in the body. And cilantro is also a chelator of heavy metal. So another common denominator with people that have Alzheimer's and dementia is they have heavy metals, Sean, in their body. So I think of us men, and I think also too, I've got this wonderful prostate tea and tincture kit. Every man who's over 40 years old does not want to lose his vigor. He doesn't want to lose his drive. He doesn't want to lose his strength. He doesn't want to lose his ability to be intimate with his spouse. He doesn't want to be up all night peeing, and he doesn't want to have flow issues. So just like our car, I recommend men doing this if you're 40 or over once a year, just for preventative purposes. Just a few other products here real quick, Sean. I know a lot of people struggle with GI issues, whether it's diverticulosis, Crohn's, IBS. They could have gas, they could have bloating, they could have cramps. So I've got this wonderful digestive tonic that's really going to soothe over the stomach itself. And I know for people that are very active, one of the things we need, and I take daily, is white willow. White willow has salicin in it, and that is an anti-inflammatory. Now, white willow itself is the original aspirin, Sean. What happened in 1860 is Bayer took the salicin out of the white willow bark itself and converted it to acetylsalicylic acid, and they patented it and called it aspirin. So we know there's aches and pains for active men and women, so I would encourage people to have that. And I also know I have this wonderful formula that I take in conjunction with my Superior Vascular Cleanse, and that's my Superior Manpower Testosterone Boosting Tincture. So men who are active, who like to work out, I also have the arginine to citrulline in this formula, and I have 4 wonderful testosterone boosting herbs in this formula for people to take. And one of the things, Sean, with testosterone levels, when they're low in men, there could be several reasons, but possibly one of those could be we have too much stress in our lives. Both men and women, we have too much stress. So I have a formula called Relax, and this is a nervine relaxer for the herbs themselves, or for our nerves themselves. And I really like to take this about an hour before bed every night just to relax the nervous system. So I have these products and many more on my website. And I have a 10% off code for all of Sean's faithful listeners, which is SGT10. Also, too, if you're interested in my book, I have it on Kindle now. So Kindle readers can get this. People are requesting it on Kindle, but I have it at mustreadbooks.info. We have a multi-book discount. We also have a PDF copy that you can share with all your friends and neighbors and family members. If you want to understand end times Bible prophecy, what's going on, and how to identify those that are the Antichrist, who are many, you'll find that out in the book. So I really appreciate you having me on, Sean. Thank you so much, and God bless you, brother.
Yeah, of course, brother. Thank you. And one last question here. You mentioned white willow. Can you show that again? Because I want people to understand that's really great for pain. Is that what you said? I've heard that before. And just for those who suffer from pain, daily basis, weekly basis, instead of acetaminophen, which is so incredibly hard on your liver, or ibuprofen, this will actually help cure your pain. And note what you said. Who's responsible for removing that? Did you say Bayer?
Bayer in 1860.
The glyphosate people.
Yes. So actually about 40 to 50% of these prescription drugs, they take herbs in nature and they convert something and they synthetically alter it, because they can't patent anything in nature that God put there for us, of course. And then they turn around and sell it to us for a profit.
They're such demons. And folks can find that at ourfathersherbs.com, correct?
Yes, and a 10% discount, SGT10, for all the faithful listeners.
Perfect.
And I just want to encourage people, if this is really going to happen over the 4th of July, coincidentally, over our 250th year of independence, where things may come to a screeching halt, please consider not only stocking up on herbal remedies, because tinctures never expire. So 20 years from now, you can still use this or pass this down to, your children or your grandchildren. So tinctures are wonderful to have in time of need. We don't know what's going to happen, but also make sure you have enough food stocked up and a way to get water. I just think the basics are really critical to have, Sean, because you just never know, and we don't want to take anything for granted, but ultimately we trust God.
Amen. It's the only thing you can trust. I mean, isn't that the punchline to the story? Read the Bible, guys. As in the days of Noah, there's nothing new under the sun. It's the only thing you can trust is the Word of God and the Lord Jesus Christ. And by the way, to that end, the Shroud of Turin, it's real. That is a reverse, a negative photograph of the man crucified that we call the Lord Jesus Christ. Scientifically proven. It's scientifically proven, folks. Get on the right side. Andrew, thanks so much for being here. It's always great to have you.
Thanks for having me, Sean. God bless you. Looking forward to seeing you again.
All right. God bless you. All right, guys. There he goes, Andrew Swedger. I will leave the links below. SGT10 is the coupon code to save at ourfathersherbs.com. I do recommend the white willow for sure, guys. But take a look at all the products. And until next time, I want to remind you guys, again, with my gratitude, thanks for finding us at sgtreport.com, thephaser.com, thelibertymill.com. You can find me on X, even though I'm throttled, at SGT Report. And until next time, may God the Creator continue to bless you and yours. Bye-bye.
Presidents go sideways, there is accountability, and it's usually 2 years after they get elected. And I think this might be the very same quotient, because they make promises and they don't fulfill them for reasons we may not even understand. But nonetheless, they're held accountable and should be. It is with spilt blood that we make these changes, that by revolution, we unseat those in power. It's what we did in 1776. So we've got to really do the exact same thing here. But at the end of the day, it's up to us